my name is Ishmael and today we're going to be talking about checking up on tenants and doing spot checks. Now when I say doing spot checks, I don't mean just knocking on the door and checking are they in, what quality are they doing, what this, what that, because you can easily catch someone out when they've had a bad day, they've had a long day at work, they've had a bad week. It's easy to knock on someone's door on a really bad time and find out that the house is a little bit untidy. But what I mean is the general checkups to keep an eye on that they're looking after the property generally and keeping it clean and tidy. So the reason I'm talking about this today is because I've been in talks with agents about how often they do checks. And there was one agent in particular who, one, their fees were absolutely astonishingly high, which I was very surprised, and from speaking to other people it was almost double a tenant fine fee to most agents charge. And from what I was finding with other agents, it was 50% to 100% more. So, why? Well, the thing is that this agent in particular, who charges ridiculous amounts, they were saying that only once in the tenancy agreement term will they actually check up on the tenant. Which means, if you have a 6-month tenancy agreement, they will check up after 3 months. If you have a 12-month tenancy agreement, they will check on the tenant after 6 months. So only once are they actually going to check on the tenant. So what am I paying them for? Well, not a lot. But regardless of that, the question is, how often should you be checking? Well, it varies really with the tenant to tenant, so you really have to get a feel for the tenant and see how they are. So my ideal checkup, which sometimes is not convenient for the tenant, sometimes they don't like it, but I personally think it's the best way to do it, is to check after month 1, 2 and 3, then check after month 6, and then depends how the tenant is, you might check after month 9 or 12, and then 6 months after that, or even a year after that. It depends. One of my tenants, I ended up checking in month 2, 6, and then when they ring me. Why? Because they were such a good tenant, and everything was spotless every time I went round, and it was clean and tidy, that I didn't need to check up on them. They weren't causing any damage, and on top of that, they have actually started renovating the property now. So they've been there over 2 years and they've started renovating the property. So that is great news for me because it saves me having to look after the property as much, because they're doing generally tidying up the property and repainting and decorating the property, which obviously saves me a little bit of time and energy. When I have a tenant change, it seems like they might actually have a property which is ready for another tenant to go in, so I might not have to spend any money on it, which is absolutely amazing. So, another reason why I'm talking about this is because I've read recently that there was one specific incident where a landlord, obviously they were self-managing, and they decided to go away for work purposes. During COVID, they had work-related distance working where they had to move away from their tenant, so they couldn't check up on their tenant regularly. And what happened is, unfortunately, the tenant was using drugs and they got in problems with their dealer. And it turns out that the dealer was coming round and breaking doors, breaking windows, smashing windows, and it eventually turned into a police incident, and the tenant got removed for safety issues on their behalf. So the landlord didn't have to kick them out, but the tenant was causing issues in a neighbourhood which was causing a person to come and break the property. Now, if the landlord had gone round, they would have seen the condition of the property, because when they eventually went back, they found drugs and cigarette butts all over the property. Well, not drugs, but spliffs all over the property, where the property was a complete mess inside. Now, if they would have come round before, they would have seen that the property was going to a state. It was getting stinky. I don't know if they allowed smoking, but it was getting full of smoke. It had ash and everything all over the floor. So they would have seen that the tenant was not looking after the property, and they could have said, sort this out or you're out. And therefore it may not have escalated to broken windows and the police getting involved. So it's very important to make sure you keep an eye on your tenants. Make sure that your tenants are either checked up by you or by your agent regularly. Now, once every 6 months is quite long. I would recommend once every 3 months, agreeing that with an agent, or more often at the beginning of the tenancy to check up and see how they are. Now, some agents really don't care, and it sounds of things, this particular agent checking up once in the tenancy really doesn't care. Now, you don't really want to be working with an agent that doesn't care. Why? Because they're going to go in your property and they're going to say, well, the property hasn't fallen apart, it's fine. And what they're going to do, they're not going to tell you that the tenant is not looking after it, it's getting dirty, it's getting damaged, and it's going to get into a worse state over time. And unfortunately, it's not the case that most tenants are actually bad tenants, but it's just a case that that's what they're used to. So some tenants walk into a property and they see it, oh, it's very nice. But the problem is that over time, these tenants bring the property to the standard they're comfortable with. Everyone has a different threshold for mess. Everyone has a different threshold for dirt. And some people don't care, some people do care. And it doesn't matter what condition you put the property in, they'll always revert to that standard. Now, the threshold, I find, you can sometimes tell by looking at the tenant and getting a vibe for how they are, but it's very unfair to judge a book by its cover, as they say, because tenants' look can be deceiving. Quite often, I don't dress up. I don't see the need to dress up. Why do I need to dress up? There's no need for me to go and wear a suit and look all flashy, because I don't need to prove my stature. I am who I am, just like everyone else. You shouldn't be walking around in something that is not your standard thing. Yes, some people love wearing suits and they feel really comfortable and they just want to put a suit on every day and they love it. Some people put it on for special occasions. Some people don't. It all depends what sort of person you are, but you should not be dressing up how you are not. And this is the thing, when a tenant comes in and they dress up, sometimes you can get a feel that they are dressed up, sometimes they feel like that's their normal wear. And the thing is that even if a tenant looks scruffy, it doesn't matter how they will look after property. As I heard from one of my mentors, Samuel Leeds, someone came to one of his events looking very scruffy. Now, they did the crash course with Samuel Leeds, and during a day they went to the back and said, I want to sign up for the advanced training program, I want to sign up for the academy. Now the thing is that they looked at him and said, how are you going to pay for it? And he goes, don't worry about money. And they go, how are you going to pay for it? They go, he said, don't worry about money. I got it sort of covered. Now they looked at him and they saw scruffy clothes, he probably doesn't have any money, he can't afford to pay for it. But then, one of the people clocked something very important. He was carrying a Ferrari bag. All his stuff was in a Ferrari bag. Now, the importance about him carrying a Ferrari bag is that to carry a Ferrari bag, you have to own a Ferrari. And you have to be in a Ferrari's owners club. On top of that, the bag itself cost £50,000. So, everyone thought he was a scruffy person, no one took notice of him. Although, he must have owned a Ferrari, and he must have had £50,000 to spend on a bag, which means he must have had some money. So, you can't just judge someone by what they're wearing. Yes, he was carrying that bag, but if he wasn't carrying that bag, no one would have known that he had a Ferrari, and no one would have known that he must have had some money. So, the point about this is that you should always make sure you check the tenants and not judge them by what they're wearing, how they look, or how they present themselves. Because quite often some of the richest people in the world, billionaires, dress with the same plain clothes every day and don't wear expensive suits. They might have a tailor-made suit, yes, but they don't have lots of different expensive clothes for everyday use. Most of them. Some do. So if you like this video, subscribe to my channel, whack that bell notification icon to get notified of videos coming out each and every week.